We are here today with the Chevy 6500 HD Silverado. This is a brand new chassis that's just come out. We posted a picture of this on our social media a couple of weeks ago, and the response we got was pretty amazing. There's obviously a lot of people that are excited for this. Chevy's been out of this market, as far as we've been concerned, for more than a decade. People used to love the top kicks, and when Chevy stopped selling those, I mean, people were devastated. Ford took over the market, and Dodge has been there a little bit here and there, but Chevy has not been an option for us and our customers for quite some time. So people are pretty excited about this, and we wanted to do an in-depth walk around of the chassis, so that if you're looking at bringing this into your fleet to replace Ford 550s, you know all the good parts and all the not so good parts about this. And this is going to be specifically focused on a service truck application. So again, we don't sell stake beds or flat beds or dump bodies or anything like that. So if you're looking at the 6500 for a non-service truck application, you know, maybe this video isn't as helpful for you, but if you're looking at the 6500 for service truck application, we want to give you everything we know to date. So let's dig in here. This truck is built in Springfield, Ohio, in the Navistar plant. This is a joint venture between Navistar, which is international, and GM. Navistar provides the frame and the axles, and GM provides everything else. This is going to be sold under two different badges. You've got the bow tie, and then you've also got this under an international badge that's called the International CV. Those trucks are almost identical. The only thing that's different about those is the badging and who your dealer is. You don't really need to dig into the specs on International versus Chevy. They're the exact same truck. The two big things that people are excited about is the engine. This has the Duramax 6.6 liter and the Allison transmission. The Duramax is giving you 350 horsepower and 700 pounds of torque. And if you compare that to the 550 Power Stroke is giving you 330 horsepower and 750 foot-pounds of torque. So they're pretty neck and neck there. One thing you need to know about the Allison transmission is that if you take this truck to get serviced, the Allison transmission needs to be serviced by an Allison dealer. Not all Chevy dealers have that Allison certification. You want to make sure that when you're looking for some place for service, the dealer you're taking this to has the Allison certification. Otherwise, they're going to pull your transmission out and send it out to be worked on. While we're talking about service, one thing that Chevy has that may be really helpful for customers is that they've allowed some of their bigger fleets to do their own warranty service and be their own service center. Ford has never allowed, to my knowledge, anybody to do that. They've been really protective of their dealers. So if you've got a fleet of Fords, as you know, those need to all go to the dealer. I talked to GM, and they said that absolutely for the 6500 and their cousins, you're going to be able to do your own warranty service if you're already set up for that. Chevy is going to give you two different cab options. You've got the standard cab, like we see here, and then they also have a four-door option, a crew cab. They currently do not have any extended cab options, and they also give you a lot more wheelbase options. So for us, that's not a huge advantage because we only need 84-inch CA, and again, CA is cab to axle. That's the distance from the back of the cab to the center of the axle, the rear axle. So we don't need those different distances, but if you have other applications, the additional flexibility may be helpful for you. This is officially a Class 6 truck. The Ford 550, which we're looking at comparing, is a Class 5 truck. The difference being the GVW. So the The max GVW of this unit is 23,000. The max GVW you can get on a 550 is 19.5. So you're picking up 3,500 pounds of payload here. And if you look at the specs, this unit only weighs, compared to an equivalent Ford 550 4x4, another 250 pounds. So you're getting quite an extra amount of payload, and it doesn't really cost you that much. This comes in a 4x2 and a 4x4 option, and that's from the factory, so you don't need to send it out like other Class 6s to get an aftermarket 4x4 option. We got this truck in with spring suspension. One really interesting feature that Chevy has offered is factory air ride on the 6500 and the lower ones too. That may be a really good option for service trucks. We run them on the bigger Class 7 units. We have not done an air ride on one of these units yet, but hopefully we will soon and be able to report on that. When you do the air ride, you're going to get an engine-driven air compressor, not like the old Kodiaks that had the electric air compressor in the front. You're going to get an engine-driven air compressor, and it also has an option for an air dryer and heater too. That may be a really good option for service trucks. I will tell you that the springs on this unit compared to a 550 unit, this unit sagged a lot more. We actually had to spring both sides of this unit and put some additional springs in the crane side. On the Fords, we can usually get away with just springing the crane side, and the ride and everything is good. This truck just is a lot saggier than the Ford truck, for better, for worse. This is a straight frame all the way through, kind of similar to a Class 7 truck, because the way Chevy's done this is they've started with a Class 6 truck and then built down for the 55 and the 4500. If you look at a Ford frame, the frame is going to be higher in the back and then it's going to dip down in the front. This frame is straight across. So what that has meant for us is that this body sits about 2 inches lower than what this body would sit on a 550, and the cab is a couple of inches higher. We do have some more clearance issues with this unit compared to a 550, and you can see how low the outriggers are. If you're working in terrain that is really hilly, that may be something to consider when looking at the Chevy. Another thing on the frame, and I wish I had a good way of showing you this, is that pretty much everything is huck bolted back there, which again is more like a Class 7 truck. The disadvantage of that we found out later is that when we went to go spring this truck, it's really difficult with the body on to add the leaf springs. When we typically do this on a Ford, it's not a big deal, but getting those huck bolts off was really difficult. In the future, we'll probably look at springing this unit before the body's on, and the difficulty with that is not knowing exactly how much spring to add. So that's something that's a little bit more challenging in an upfit on a Chevy versus a Ford. There's two options you're really going to like on the Chevy is, number one, the depth fill being right here. And what's nice about that, and we can walk around and show you, is that you get to run 2 fuel tanks on our application. So this unit's actually given us 65 gallons of fuel capacity with the DEF being moved up here. The other thing you're really going to like is being able to access the engine without pulling the cab apart like you have to do on the 550. So it's got this forward tilt hood that's really easy to get to everything in the engine, again, without having to pop the cab off like the 550s do. On a 550 installation, this here is going to be DEF, and you're only going to be able to run a rear fuel tank. Since the DEF is in the front, you get the opportunity to run a midship and a rear fuel tank. So this Chevy is going to give you 65 gallons of fuel capacity. One thing that was a little challenging on this install is this is an NPAC, and so the NPAC picks up its diesel fuel from the chassis, and Chevy hasn't done a very good job of labeling which connection is which. So hopefully, Chevy, if you're out there, you can improve that for everybody in the future. One thing that you did do that was awesome compared to previous Chevys is that the frame is painted. If anybody's ever worked underneath some of the old Chevys and you come back with the rubber, the black rubber tar stuff all over your arms that is there for 2 weeks because you can't scrub it off, thanks for getting rid of that. That was an awesome improvement to this unit. Underneath the driver's side door here, you can see the difference in height. This unit does sit up a couple inches higher than a 550, and the batteries are very easy to access. Here's your battery box right here. Very easy to access, and you also have the option of upgrading to dual alternators and 3 batteries. In the interior, if you are currently in a Silverado, this interior is going to feel very familiar to you. You've got OnStar with telematics. You also have Wi-Fi that you can connect up to 7 devices to. This comes available with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is really nice. You've got a couple of upfitter switches here, and if you need additional upfitter switches, I believe that that's an option. Wireless charging, which is a really nice feature. You've get 2 USB ports. You also get a couple of cigarette lighter charging ports. One thing that's missing in here that the 550 has, which is really nice in a field service application, is the 110 inverter, especially for charging your laptop and everything else. So I'm not sure if that's an option for Chevy or not, but if it's not an option, I would say that Chevy should incorporate that in the future. The backup camera. In the Ford 550, the backup camera, the factory backup camera, is incorporated into the rear view mirror, which is nice, but the screen is pretty small. In the Chevy, you get the backup camera screen in this larger screen in the console here, which is really nice. However, the screen is a little, the visibility is not that great. I'm going to put it in reverse here right now, and you can see the resolution is a little limited. One thing we should do is drive the truck so we can give you an idea of what the ride quality is like. So I will say that the interior seating is really nice. Compared to the bench seats that you get in a lot of trucks, this has more of a captain's chair type of feel to it. Kind of hugs you a little bit in both the driver and the passenger side. So that's really nice. I feel like acceleration is pretty good. Even on some decent sized hills that we've had around here, this truck, it's not fully loaded, but I mean, it's got a decent amount of weight in the back. This truck has no problem pulling any kind of decent grade that we've found. For anybody that's working in cities or tight areas, the turning on radius on this seems to be really pretty good. I know that the 4x2s have a 50-degree wheel cut, and the 4x4s have a 42-degree wheel cut. The turning radius seems pretty comparable to a 550. Doesn't seem like you'd have any problems getting in and out of tight spaces. So this is a Class 6 truck, and so some of the comparisons aren't exactly fair versus a Class 5 truck. It does drive a little bit stiffer than the 550 does. It's got front leaf springs similar to a Class 6 truck, where the 550 doesn't have front leaf springs. But the ride is stiffer than a 550. Now this truck's unloaded, and it also has additional springs in the back, remember, because we have to get the body lifted up. So maybe that makes a difference, and maybe it settles in after you get the truck loaded and everything gets broke in. But brand new and empty, this truck does ride rougher than what a 550 does. You'll also notice a little bit of a floating action in the front. There is a lot of weight in the rear of this body that is a little bit different from the 550, and I feel like you got to stand on the brakes a little bit harder on this truck than you do on a 550. In driving this truck, I know we mentioned that the visibility was a little bit narrower than a 550, and quite frankly, now that I'm driving this truck, I don't really see that as a problem. I don't feel like I have any visibility problems forward, but I will agree with everybody that has said that it's a little difficult to see around around the corners of this body. I wish the mirrors either stuck out further or maybe there's a different angle that they could be pointed at that you could see, because it's really difficult to see the back corners of your body. So one thing you're not going to get on the international version of this truck is the flow tie. And this is a feature that was developed, I believe, in the Camaro that they brought over for this truck, and it allows additional airflow, and it's pretty cool. This truck did come with the optional front tow hooks, which is probably a must-have in a field service application when you're off-road and getting stuck a lot. The front tow hooks are really good to have. A couple other options you may want to consider. The aluminum wheels are going to look better longer, the heated mirrors, and also the optional exhaust brake. We're next to the 550 before it's mounted. A couple things I wanted to point out just for comparison's sake with the 6500. You get the DEF fuel here, so you lose the ability to run 2 fuel tanks. But the frame on the 550 is higher here, and then you'll see it kind of swoops down towards the cab. So the cab sits lower and the body sits higher on the 550. You also, on the 550, get a lot more area to mount the body on. The Chevy's got a lot of huck bolts, and especially in the rear, the frame has a lot of stuff in the way. So when we're installing a Dom 1 body, and really this shouldn't be the customer's problem, but just pointing it out for any of our other service truck friends that are out there, mounting the Chevy was a lot trickier than mounting on a Ford, which is really straightforward for us. So thanks for watching. Hopefully we answered some questions for you on Chevy's latest offering. More importantly, thank you to the field service technicians that are out there doing what you do 12 months a year. We're getting ready to celebrate July 4th, and 100% of Americans enjoy roads and bridges and electricity and hospitals, but very few Americans appreciate what it takes to build and maintain that infrastructure. We understand that here at QT Equipment, so thank you very much to the field service techs. If you have any questions on the Chevy or any service trucks in general, you can find us on Instagram at QT Equipment, Facebook QT Equipment, or our website qtequipment.com. Work dirty, be happy, until next time.